know history. I know the truth about the economy with the derivatives of 1.5 quadrillion, a lot of the big mega banks being leveraged 60 to 70 to 1. And I know that's unsustainable. And unfortunately, people forget what happened in 2008. And they also aren't aware that these boom and busts get bigger. And the boom will be bigger, but the bust will be much bigger as well. And so I think there's a big awakening for people that are understanding this.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Now, a lot of the folks who listen to our channel are concerned about reducing risk and preparing for being more resilient. So your advice as far as following your passion, following what you're interested in, and that can generate alternate streams of income, and that makes you less completely dependent on your day job as your sole source of income. In terms of taking on additional real estate, that also seems to make sense in the sense of this is a real asset. It's not something that's just going to disappear and vanish if there were some currency collapse or some other social unrest. But people are often concerned about reducing debt, and so if people are already own real estate, or if they'd like to own more without taking on additional debt immediately, what are some of just few key principles that they should be aware of that they might find out in your book?
Well, that's a great question, because there's a lot of misconceptions about real estate investing. In fact, the website where I have a great blog and a free video series that people can check out at resourcefulrealestateacademy.com, one of the things when they opt in, one of the videos that they get is the 7 big myths about real estate investing. And one of them is that you need to take on debt to buy real estate. And it's just fundamentally not true. Now, does that mean if you go buy a single family home, a lot of people may need to take out a mortgage, or in the 2000 run up to the housing collapse, the last housing collapse, a lot of people were over leveraged significantly, and those are the people that were pretty much clobbered by the downfall in the market. But the truth is that today, just like 10 years ago and just like 10 years from now, there's always the opportunity to acquire value. And this could be done really, Lee, in companies. It could be done in so many different things. But real estate allows the option of you finding value, or what's otherwise usually referred to as a good deal, and being able to find what I call an end user operator for that property. Now, let me give you an example. Most of the properties we buy, we sell within a week to 30 days. And we don't take on debt to buy them. I either will use my own money now. I started out using other people's money because I had no money. And so I don't necessarily take on debt. I just bring in a partner that recognizes the opportunity. And so that's one of the ways. Or another way is basically you find that opportunity, you find that value. And real estate's one of the few things, Lee, where you can literally make money. And this is going to sound like a late night infomercial. I understand a lot of people, have that misconception. But it's the only asset class that I know that, for example, you find a great piece of real estate at a great price and you contract it. Well, there's nothing stopping you from being able to sell your contract or assign your contract to that end user operator for a fee. And that fee could be $1,000, it could be $100,000. I mean, it could be dependent on the value on the property and how big the purchase price, what a discount you're offering it to that end investor. So this is what I love about real estate. I think particularly in times like the ones we're living in the run-up in this, I've said for some time now, there won't be any housing, there won't be any economic collapse or dollar collapse until there is until basically hedge funds and private equities and a lot of these big banks sell off all this real estate that they've bought over the last 3-4 years. They're the least that are going to get holding the bag in seeing markets collapse. So I think in the run-up to that, in the next couple of years, as we start to see the companies like Ditech returning with 125% financing, companies like Colony Capital, Skyline Financial, Wells Fargo, and others beginning to return to subprime loans, you're going to see a run up in prices, and that presents a great opportunity for investors that are educated and know what they're doing. Just like on the flip side, when housing prices collapse, which they will again, that's a great opportunity as well, because that's the time when most people are out of the market, but the people that really know what they're doing are in the market. And so, I think, there's a lot of bad things and negative news going on. But when it comes to, I think, the ability of someone to be an entrepreneur, and I know we're going to talk about other ways of opting out of the job paradigm, I think we're at one of the greatest moments in history for people to quit their job and be their own, basically be the master of their destiny.
So speaking of that, the job paradigm, J.O.B, on your website, you talk about that, and it's in capital letters. What does it stand for?
Just over broke. And I often will say that there's good jobs out there for, there could be some doctors are employed, they're technically employees, or some bankers that are technically employees, mortgage people. I have a buddy who's one of the biggest mortgage lenders, commercial mortgage lenders in the country. He basically does $100 million plus loans to these developers that build thousands and thousands of rental units. And he's an employee. At the end of the day, they take 55% roughly when they factor in all the state, local, and federal taxes out of his paycheck. And it sucks, but he does really well. And so, and then also there's people that, may be employed by a company that's up and coming that they feel they have room to grow in. And I'm not saying that's necessarily bad. I'm particularly speaking to really what's been termed the rat race, where people are working these jobs centered around consumer spending or service type related jobs, and they're not going to get anywhere. And the truth is that the faster that people recognize that, the better it's going to be. Let me give you an example. People that work for me, I'm routinely telling them, hey, because I know I become friends with them. I get to know them. I know what their skills are. And I tell them, hey, you should start a business around your skill. And again, going back to the comment I made earlier, the job paradigm's collapsing. In fact, today or tomorrow on FabianForLiberty.com, I'll be posting an article about why you should quit your job, the top reasons you should quit your job. And I will just kind of give a quick disclaimer. I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow if you don't have the financial resources to basically support yourself and your family, but develop a plan where you can quit your job because there's a lot of reasons why I think people that are stuck in the J.O.B paradigm are going to be the most affected when the global economic reset hits. And
basically that makes a lot of sense, because then you are if your only source of income is a job, then that's a dependency. You're dependent upon that. So what are the steps, just in very high level, what are the steps that you recommend people walk through in order to increase their independence?
Well, I will, there's various different ways, of course. I mean, I help a lot of people with becoming a real estate investor. I understand real estate investing isn't for everyone. I think the greatest opportunity, though, for entrepreneurs or people that want to become entrepreneurs is, in essence, starting an online business. And that online business is a variety of different things. It can be centered around mostly always, it's centered around a passion you may have. Let me give you a perfect example. I can't tell you how many individuals I've had the opportunity of talking to and getting to know, people like yourself and others, that a couple years back, Lee, they basically said, hey, you know what? I'm really politically active. I have an idea. I have an opinion. I'm going to share that opinion with the world. Well, today they reach hundreds of thousands of people, and they have, if not millions of people. And that's a thriving business in the sense that the bigger your audience, the more ability you have to earn an income from that, whether it's just, through Google partnerships or YouTube partnerships or advertisers. I've met another example that I routinely talk about, a friend of mine who runs a podcast called Prepper Recon. He, a couple years back, had, real beliefs with respect to helping others prepare. And he really felt that was something that was a calling for him. And he built his audience around that. And shortly after, he started to write novels about preparedness and about financial collapse. And he's literally sold thousands and thousands of copies to his book and this is what I mean. So what I'd like to start off with people telling them, Lee, is what are you passionate about? What do you love? And you could quickly go online, whether it's Amazon, Google, eBay, meetup groups, Facebook groups, and find out, is there a market viability? Is there a place in the market for that product or service or passion that you have?
So we covered that in the first part of our interview, and you talked about also, once you test the market viability, connecting with people who are already doing what you're doing, finding out a little bit about their success path, and then any specific ways that people can take some first steps into that, foray into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think the first step is to begin to develop an audience, begin to develop, what's often referred to as eyeballs. And you get eyeballs, you get attention, you build an audience by providing really good content, whether through writing a blog post, doing some videos, doing some recorded audio calls, doing a webinar, doing a seminar locally. I mean, there's so many different ways. But developing really, really good content that makes you stand out. So once you've, like we talked about in the first part of the interview, once you've checked the market viability, once you've seen who are the other experts that are likely earning a living doing what I love or what I want to be, well, how can I create even better content? How can I create content that's really meaningful and impacts people's lives? And I don't just mean, and we're talking here about so many different things. I mean, it can be anything from gardening to saving money on your grocery bill to, there's so many things. And this is what I call the new class of experts that are out there. And people would be surprised. There are experts in almost everything nowadays, multiple experts in health, fitness, all kinds of things. And I think, like I said before, we're all born with a unique ability. We all have a passion in life. And I think the sooner we begin to share that passion with the world, the sooner we'll begin to embark on the path of entrepreneurship around that passion that can help us get out of the job paradigm. I mean, that's certainly been true for my life in a variety of different ways, and countless of other people that I've had the opportunity to meet.
And again, just to underscore the principle that you stated earlier is you're not advocating that people sort of jump ship and then try to build something, but go ahead and start developing on the side, following your passion, an alternative stream of income. We've had other guests on. I know that Jerry Robinson from followthemoney.com talks about creating alternative streams of income, and once that alternative stream of income becomes significant enough for you, that really does open up new flexibility and freedom of choices for you because of your independence that it gains for you.
It's a great point. And let me also say, I get emails often where people will say, Fabian, I got a great idea for this product. Are you interested in helping me develop it or going in on it with me or whatever it may be? And I'll tell you, that's really an outdated way of thinking. I think a lot of people listening today, Lee, may have that idea that they've been thinking about. And there's a huge difference between the people that have the idea and the people that actually implement that idea. And today, like I said, and I'm just going to drive this point home again, we live in a world where you could implement your idea for almost free online and begin to test the idea. And I would recommend, there's a great book out there called The Lean Startup. And basically, it's all about this. It's all about, hey, I got a great idea. Let me get it up and running for as cheaply as I can, get customer feedback, test it, and then, continue to tweak it and make it better and better. And, again, that's why I'm so optimistic with respect for entrepreneurs, because this wasn't possible 10 years ago. It's possible today because of the internet and technology, and people really need to really understand the times they're living in and take that opportunity and run with it.
I'd like to turn our attention, if we could, to your book that's coming out now, The Global Economic Reset. If you could give us an indication of what that means, what does a global economic reset look like? And then specifically, what are the risks that it brings, and what are the signs that people will see when it's coming as near as it's going to come before it actually happens?
Yeah, well, I'll take the risk part first. We're already seeing the risks. I mean, we're seeing the risks in the collapse of the job paradigm with respect to millions of jobs that have been lost. Those jobs are not coming back. It's a fundamental transformation of the global economy. I mean, here's an interesting fact that in the next 10 years, their estimates are between 1 billion and 1.5 billion Asians will be entering the middle class. And there's going to be a huge transfer in the middle class. And we're already seeing that in America. The middle class in America is getting smaller. And so it's already underway. Now, what I mean by the global economic reset is not necessarily a theory of mine. It's a historical fact that, A, the world reserve currency status doesn't last forever. America's had the world reserve currency since 1945. And it's awarded us an inexpensive lifestyle. It's awarded us the $100 flat screen TV, low gas prices, although those are obviously increasing because of the value of the devaluing of the dollar. But it's allowed for really this boom that happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and all this growth that's happened. Well, like I said, the world reserve currency status won't last forever. There's a lot of different indicators, from the Saudis potentially, basically getting off the petrodollar and selling their oil in other currencies, to the bilateral trade agreements that are putting more pressure on the Fed to print more money because there's less global demand for the U.S. dollar. So I think pretty much the handwriting's on the wall. One of the things that have allowed us the world reserve currency status, as it allowed England and France before, is having a very powerful military. Well, we see around the world, particularly in China and Russia, real advancements in their military, and not just with respect to the military, though, Lee. Comments from China, repeated comments. I mean, I have business partners in China, and they tell me often the state-run media in China is telling the Chinese people, we're going to topple the U.S. dollar. We will have the world reserve currency. And so when that happens, that will be a significant event that will really hurt the middle class and the poor in this country. The wealthy will remain wealthy because they have assets and they have things that are of value. And so as I say, and I learned from this little old lady that I used to work with that survived the Great Depression, it's better to prepare a few years early than a few days too late. And I think that people in the Global Economic Reset book, I just cover the history behind it and all the examples that are leading up to this huge economic shift.
The loss of the U.S. dollar and the Chinese looking to topple it reminds me of a quote that we discussed in a previous interview with a different visitor, saying it was from Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, most successful legendary investor of the last century here, saying that the 19th century belonged to the British Empire and the 20th century belonged to the United States and the 21st century belongs to China, and you should invest accordingly. So what can an ordinary person do to reduce their risk of exposure to the global economic reset that's coming?
Well, and just real quick, I'd say that George Soros also said, the new engine of growth is going to be China. Real quick, it doesn't mean China doesn't have major problems. They have a huge housing bubble that will burst. They're likely going to go through a Great Depression like America did. But these are all things that actually are almost good for economies to go through some of these boom and bust cycles. Not the ones that are manipulated and created by the Fed, but natural free market boom and bust cycles. Now, we know China doesn't have a free market, but the point is that there is this idea of creative destruction in economies that actually help make the economy stronger. With respect to your question on what the average person can do, I think we pretty much covered it at the beginning of this second part of the interview. Lee, I think that people need to get out of the job paradigm, because those people that are dependent on wages, that trade, again, an outdated model, just like the dollar is outdated. The idea of trading your time for money is an outdated model. The quicker you can get out of that model and trade value you create and add that value to the marketplace, you're going to get rewarded much more. So the sooner that you can do that, the better. And then, of course, having things of real value. A piece of paper for a bond or a piece of paper for a stock in Facebook, to me, isn't the same as me having some gold or silver, or for that matter, some real estate that I could rent out that has little to no debt. These are the kind of things, or even for that matter, a business that you own and operate. These are things that I think are critical amongst all of the other preparations that, of course, every prepper, talks about and that are all critical and really should be the basics, if you will. This is kind of above the basics. And I think that's what's really going to help people. I will say this, in the global economic reset, one of the goals people could start working towards is putting aside enough money for you to last, 3 to 6 months. If the economy grinds down to a screeching halt, can you get by for that long? These are things that I think people need to think about. But all the above that I just mentioned are all steps that individuals can begin to take to prepare for this event. And again, for me, the handwriting's on the wall, and it's not just, again, my theory. It's based on historical fact and historical precedent. And once we open our eyes to that, once we educate ourselves about that, I think your audience will be in agreement.
Fabian, in wrapping up, you've given us a lot of food for thought. If you want to find out how to get a copy of your new book, The Global Economic Reset, where can they find that?
Yeah, they can just go to actually FabianForLiberty.com, has all that information. They'll see it on the right-hand side. Just click the copy, the front cover of the book. And all my other programs and services are at FabianForLiberty.com or FabianCalvo.me. Most of the services or products that I have 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 great blogs or have a lot of free information that they can obtain by just opting in. That'll really, I think, kind of help them open their mind up to the possibilities that are out there.
I know one more question people have. If I could ask you one more, is a lot of folks are reluctant because we've been kind of embarrassed out of taking the risks seriously. We're being told from a lot of sources that things are just fine, and the system is going to, even though it has a few bumps in the road, it'll keep on going, and you should just stay plugged in, and things will turn out well for you. So even family members and well-meaning friends and everything will try to discourage people or scoff or cluck their tongues if people say that they're taking some steps that may be unconventional. Could you give people a little bit of words of wisdom as far as how they can maintain some of that resolution, or some maybe ways that they can respond? How do you respond when people cast doubts and say, you're just wasting your time, or everything's just fine? Or how do people respond to that so that they don't lose their footing when they're trying to make some of these first few steps?
Well, I would first start by saying, there's the old adage, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And, the truth is that a lot of people are programmed. They've been programmed to seek safety in a 9-to-5. They've been programmed to believe that America will always be America. And, truth be told, Lee, we're not going to change those minds until they're ready and recognize. And for me, I think the best way of doing that is by leading by example. If I had a job, I can't tell you how many people that I talked to had a job a couple of years ago. Today, they work their own hours. They're their own boss. And that has directly shown everyone around them that, wow, he or she was really able to do this and is living a much better lifestyle as a result. I would just say, in my personal opinion, and people need to do their own soul searching and check in with their higher power on this, but if people aren't prepared, don't have things like food storage, aren't diversified into things like gold and silver, I think they're crazy. And again, they might think I'm crazy, but I know history. I know the truth about the economy with the derivatives of 1.5 quadrillion, a lot of the big mega banks being leveraged 60 to 70 to 1. And I know that's unsustainable. And unfortunately, people forget what happened in 2008. And they also aren't aware that these boom and busts get bigger. And the boom will be bigger, but the bust will be much bigger as well. And so I think there's a big awakening for people that are understanding this. I think one of the important things, too, though, is that we don't develop this bunker mentality. With all things said and done, we know all the stuff that we know to be true. That doesn't mean that we have this bunker mentality, and just the opposite. I mean, I'm out there starting new businesses. I'm out there helping as many people as I can get educated about what's going on, just like you are with this podcast. And I think that's what really ultimately makes the difference. People will realize what's happening, hopefully earlier than too late, but I think people will realize the world that they're living in, and they're beginning to realize it, and I think they're taking steps accordingly.
Well, Fabian, you've been generous with your time, and I wanted to thank you on behalf of all of our Reluctant Prepper audience for joining us here on ReluctantPreppers.com. We'd like to have you back another time after your book, The Global Economic Reset, comes out, to hear some of the feedback that you get on that from your audience, and to share some more of your insights with us on how people can improve their financial independence.
Yeah, sounds great, Lee. Thanks for having me on.